Welcome everyone to the Elephants on Business podcast, improving our small business journey one episode at a time. Today, we're going to take you through offshoring and how to start that journey in a small business. And the 3 or 4 things we're going to cover off today are make sure you have operating procedures, know why you're offshoring, think about low value tasks, and in the last section, just the 3 different ways you can offshore. Welcome, Oz.
Yep, great to be back.
Oz is smiling because he loves our offshore team.
Yeah, it's good. Offshoring is great, there's obviously a lot of pros and there is obviously cons to it as well. But it is, I guess the pros outweigh the cons in our case, and we actually really enjoy having our offshore team.
And it's a perfect timing. Our last episode was about hiring in Australia, and it was quite a long episode. We went through like 6 or 7 things that you need to think about, and one of the biggest things when you're thinking about hiring is just like, well, wages in Australia are expensive. We talk about inflation and the Great Resignation and job rates being low, and it's expensive to hire. And so one of the first default things I think small business owners think about is offshore.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to your first hire, like typically you're hiring for like those low value sort of items. Yeah. You're not typically hiring a manager to take care of most of your workflow, etc. You are hiring just to fill in gaps. And
one of the hardest things is like sometimes just by the nature of your business, you might not have a full-time, 37.5-hour week person. And that's, to drop 50, 60, 70, whatever the number is. A lot of people look at offshore, and obviously in our business here at Elephant, we have a really great offshore team. It's been, say, 4 years, I think, in the making. So finance started it. So Gav and I actually started it 4 years ago. And obviously Oz and Sam, the accountants, joined us about a year ago, and now have a team that I think we've got 12 over there with a bit of marketing and a whole bunch of range of services. And I think it's been a fantastic part to our business from a cost perspective, but also, I think that one of the first things I'll say about offshoring is I was completely wrong about offshoring at the start. I thought that, you're going to get low value people and they're not going to be that good. And that was like super arrogant of me because there are smart people everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, there are geniuses, and there are people good at admin, people good at sales, people good at IT everywhere. And as soon as I realized that, hold on, the process of offshoring is a similar thing here. It's just you have to hire correctly and you have to have all these things we're going to talk about done.
And we were probably on the same boat, much like you, a little bit arrogant and thinking, they're probably not going to be able to fill in a lot of the tasks. But as you say, there is people around the world that specialise in admin. They specialise in bookkeeping or specialise in...
better than us at it.
Yeah, and they do it like, 40 hours a week, and that's all they do, and they live and breathe it, and they love it. So why not use that to your advantage, right?
And I think let's start off at, the most boring part of offshoring, well before you've even thought about offshoring, is I think the key aspect is how well documented is your current business.
Yeah, your processes.
The processes, right? The benefit of hiring a staff in Australia is they're next to you. They're right next to you. You can see when they're stressed. You can feel when they're unproductive. You can feel when they're worried about doing something, and you can dive in and you can help out.
Yeah, there's a lot. When someone's sitting next to you, there's a lot you can solve by just quickly having a chat.
How are you going? Yep.
As you said, you can read the person. Are they looking tired? Are they happy? Yeah. You can quickly take them out to lunch. And there's all these things that you can do when you're...
Gauge what's going on.
Yeah, correct.
The hardest thing about offshoring is that, they are not near you. Some days... You might be so busy. There are days where I've gone, oh gosh, I haven't even spoken to them.
Have you forgotten about them?
I've forgotten about them because they're not in the office and they're doing my work for it, which is so bad to say. But the biggest solve for that is, and before we talk about kind of procedures, it's also important to think about like people who are working in offshore are, I think, just like our team are some of the most generous and grateful people I've ever met. They're grateful to have a job. Yeah. They're so happy to be working for an Australian company. They want to feel productive. They want to work hard. They want to prove their value. They want to see us succeed just like anyone else. They're not just people sitting around the world just like, they can't be bothered. They just want to do some work and piss off. Yeah. They really care. True?
Yeah, exactly. They've joined a team and they're
up and about.
Yeah, they're up and about. They want us to increase the business. which means they might get a promotion. You know,
Yep.
like any time that there's work available, they're all jumping up and down and saying, "Pass it over to me." So it's fantastic to have a team like that where they actually embrace it and enjoy what they do, and you know, they come in with a good skill set as well at times.
And so the important part, your job, I think, when offshoring, the biggest job is documenting your process.
Yeah, so that's always a tough one, right? So like initially at the start, when you don't have anyone, no hires, the process is pretty much in your mind, right? So like you know exactly what you're doing because that's what you do. But breaking it down into, you know, a task and steps, like task 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of just doing something maybe very simple. Maybe it ends up being 10 steps that need to be maybe documented.
And let's just talk about a very simple one that a lot of businesses have, just invoicing, right? Someone sits next to you and their job is invoicing, just like, oh, yeah, mate, you log into Xero, you click this button, I'll tell you the person, you hit the invoice button, done.
Yeah.
Very simple. It's a 2-minute task.
It's simple when we do it. Yeah.
If the person's sitting next to you and they just go, oh, Sean, can I just triple check this? Or is this GST inclusive, not inclusive? Or is this the right product code? Easy.
Yeah.
They do it 5, 10 times. They ask you the question. They get a rhythm and they're off, they're running. But when you're offshore, the way they work is through their tasks with following to a T. They do not want to make a mistake. So that little 2-minute job could be a 5-page document with 10 screenshots or a video
and
that
a
you
video
record.
of it as well on top of it.
It's a lot of stuff, right? So, you know, just like hiring in Australia in our last episode, defining the tasks that they want to do and then having it documented. And I think documented in 2 ways, and we've talked about this a lot like in the last week or two. I think video recording is really good.
Video recording is,
but it doesn't solve everything. You need to have it written.
Yeah, I feel as though the video recording is great for an initial person when they're joining.
Yeah.
It gives them the first maybe 5 days of what needs to be done, or the first 30 days of their training to get them into, you know, the business. But it doesn't solve for if there's a little question and it's within the video, you can't simply go and find it. Whereas if it's a PDF,
a document's
control
easy to
find,
skim.
you can skim through it. You can find exactly what you're after, and maybe at times they don't want to bother us, which is fine. But we always obviously say, like, you can ask us questions at any point in time. But if it's quite simple, I think the PDF document with some screenshots probably solves a lot of problems.
And my thing with videos is I think it's great to communicate them through video, and I think it's very warm because you're talking, you're clicking and showing. But then if there's an update to that video, it's the whole video again, which is frustrating. As I think videos should be used for high level concepts, like, hey, this is like what we do in the business, or this task is to achieve this. And then the document is okay, but then how do you do it? You click this button, you press this, you send, you save it in draft. Because if there is a change, and in small business, it changes nonstop. You can add in that extra line going, oh, we're going to do these 3 things first, and now we're going to do this thing next. And re-recording a video over and again is just tiring.
Yeah, very tiring. And as you said, that process or procedure, I think you have to have it well and truly in place before you even start looking at these options. We obviously had you that helped us throughout the process.
I'd failed 1,000 times before.
You know, we already had a bit of a head start in the sense of, you know, we already knew what to sort of come up with in terms of, do we have our PDFs first or do we do videos, etc. So at least we had a little bit of a head start in that regard. But obviously this video is, you know, just as a timely reminder to maybe have some PDF documents in place before you start thinking of offshoring. So when you're doing simple tasks that you don't want to continue doing it, maybe they're quite repetitive and maybe there's no automation from a technology point of view and it just still needs manual labor, maybe just start documenting it now and just putting it into a PDF and having it stored somewhere.
And I think, you know, spot on. The whole like writing down the procedures is a very draining task, but I reckon just carry a pen and pad next to you, and when you're doing something, or maybe you're at the stage, because obviously if you're offshoring you're a bit busy, you're at the stage of you're going to bulk in some work that you're going to do, just have the pad and go, I did this, just write stuff down of how you've done things. And then, I think before you ever get someone to start, really document the process. And again, there's a lot of great things online, right? Like how to use Gmail, all that kind of stuff, how to use the software, Xero, whatever it might be, your industry-based software. Collate all those websites too, just so that when the person starts, they have your procedures, they have copious amounts of videos, wherever it might be, just to get them into a rhythm of working.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So that's the first one, like the processes. And I think, like I said, that starts well before you even think of hiring.
Yeah.
Start to get an operating procedure in your business. You might find efficiencies that push out the need for an offshore person. So that's the first thing. The next part is obviously know why you're offshoring. And it's very similar to the last episode I was where it's like, are you hiring for a skill set? Are you hiring because you're growing too fast? Are you hiring because you're just lazy and unproductive?
Yeah.
It's really important to know why you're offshoring. True?
Yeah, that's very true. And our reason, just to reflect on our journey, was essentially we just needed capacity, right? So like people to maybe help with a little bit of bookkeeping, some admin work, emails, etc., etc. So those tasks sometimes they take a lot out of the day of a director, because you're probably dealing with problems, trying to speak to clients,
discussions,
sales, etc. So just having someone to fall back on to just help with those day-to-day tasks have been great, and that's the reason why we hired, right? So it fits into that model.
It's the same on our side. Like I said, it was Gav and I, and we'd had the business, we were going on for like 2 and a bit years, and we're getting busier and busier and busier, and like both of us could see we were getting more tired, and you could see just business fatigue just like crippling Gav and I. And the cost of hiring was just a bit too much for us. I don't think I can afford that. Or if I did afford it, I'd be stressed. So we looked at offshore because, and it flies into the next topic, it's like a lot of professional services is making yourself free to talk, and the real tough advice and the structuring and whatever it might be. A lot of part of it is just there's a lot of mundane to do but very important tasks in finance, right? You got to sign this document, you got to submit this, you got to click these buttons, got to check this and that.
And then you get an audit each year, right? As well.
You get audited and all that kind of stuff. Everything has to be clean as ever. And the reason we offshored is we were so busy, but I was really lucky because I had my first hire of Gav, and we could both tackle the problem. I would tackle it from like writing process maps, and then it was over to him to kind of train that staff member offshore. And it was it worked really well because Gav knew that the more he trained that staff, the less he'd have to do. So then he could take more work off me.
Yes.
So it worked really, really well. But we both, in our industry, in our journey, offshored because we needed capacity, but we were very specific, right? You needed accounting-based skill sets. I needed admin. There's no loan brokering in where our offshore team is. So we just needed people who were great with admin, and we were going to teach them. But because it's easy to make the same mistake of, I just need someone to do everything, and it doesn't work. It's so much harder offshore.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot harder offshore. Like to think that they're going to take a lot of tasks out of your hand. Like as we alluded, like there is a big process and things that need to be in place. It's always those low value items that you try and tick off.
And that's the next task, right? Knowing what to offshore and what not to offshore.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the general default, I don't know about anyone else, the general default is, I hate doing this task, I'm going to offshore it.
Yeah, that's right. So if you keep doing the same task and it's not adding too much value to, let's say, the end consumer customer, you probably want to outsource that, right? And the cheaper, like, if you can outsource it cheaply, then why not?
Why not? It's that whole concept of like time and value, right? Your value might be spent calling customers or taking them out for lunch or being on site or at the front of house, whatever it might be. Your value is generally for most business as close proximity to the client. That's where your value is.
Yep.
And it's well away from the low value admin tasks.
Correct.
So invoicing, billing,
raising
paperwork,
invoices,
all
following
that kind
up
of
invoicing, maybe sending some
email
reminders
management.
on email. Yeah, things like email management.
Even I know like social media, offshore, all that kind of stuff, right? Which is great to have, but takes a lot of time, takes a lot of your headspace. That's where I think you should start. And even if you start off with the 3 most important tasks, it might be invoicing, might be responding to client service requests, and maybe it's just admin, cleaning up of inboxes, or whatever it might be. If you can take those admin tasks off, remember, you're going to replace that with hopefully more client-centric things.
Yes.
And I would never say offshore complex things. I think you have to build up to that.
Yeah.
You have to build up to complexity. Low value stuff is just such a massive, because that's what bogs down small business.
Yeah, it's a massive win. As soon as we did it, we saw the benefit. The benefit straight away. It was, you got some time back, so then we can start focusing on our client
generating
and
work,
things like that. But eventually, there's going to be a point in time where hopefully you can outsource maybe some more complex tasks, which will mean then there's even more free time for us as directors, where we can go out and maybe win some more clients, or maybe we create a bigger team offshore. And people that in our business are just working within capacity, right? And it's quite sync, and no one's stressed, no one's hitting the fatigue barrier, and things are just nice. So,
but I think tackle low value and then build up to complexity.
To it slowly,
so that's the kind of the 3 more things, and then I guess the last part is there are a couple of ways to offshore, right? So we've taken one of them. So the 3 main ways are to go direct. So you can go to top jobs in Sri Lanka, top jobs in the Philippines, top jobs wherever, Vietnam, wherever it might be, and put a job ad up and hire direct. So your relationship is with the direct employee. The next one is you can go direct to an agency that's offshore.
Yeah.
And then the third option is you go to a company in Australia that manages an offshore agency and then has staff.
Yeah.
And obviously, the key decision point is the first one, going direct, is cheap because you cut out middlemen on middleman.
Yes. Yeah.
The third one, which is having offshore, is it's safer. You've got teams of people to make sure the job is done.
Yeah,
HR,
the company here
culture,
in Australia's got ticked off everything for you.
Compliance.
Technology, security, all that sort of stuff,
So understanding, again, your budget for offshoring and what you want to achieve is really important in that decision. I can talk about our journey.
Yeah, so you went obviously directly to the source. And what was the idea behind that, initially at the start?
It was, to be honest, we looked at, so we used an Australian outsourcing company, as in not an outsourcing company. We used an Australian company just to help us with admin at the start. And then it was really good. They actually helped us build our own procedures because they're so much more efficient than we are.
Yeah.
They tell us, no, that's wrong, do this. And Gav and I built a really good business based on them. Then we looked at these options. We looked at the option of another company over there. And then when you get the price list and you see that, the wage is really small and then all these costs on top are actually to the manager, one, you feel a bit bad because you're like, geez, the company's making more than the staff. And then for me, I was very lucky. I'm from Sri Lanka. I can speak the language. I have family there. So I just said, no, Gav, we're just going to have a crack at doing it ourselves. And we did a lot of ways. We put ads on Sri Lanka's topjobs.Sri Lanka. I linked in branch managers in Sri Lanka. I went pretty hardcore with trying to build it myself because just very simply, I'm a control freak.
Yeah,
I'm a massive control freak. I want to control everything. I'm a tight ass too, so I wanted to cut out the middleman. I'm just being honest here. I'm tight ass, cut out the middleman. So just we can do it ourselves. It's not that hard. We can do it ourselves. I'll tell you what.
Which that journey obviously is the most complex out of the 3.
It's the most complex out of the 3.
But I think when you get to the end and you've created that team, it's probably the most rewarding and probably the easiest to manage in terms of, from your perspective, obviously you like the control element. So
spot on.
You've got what you ticked off from the start, I guess.
For my personality, it was amazing because I like documenting procedures. I like controlling things. I wanted them to do just more than admin because I think some of my team members are 10 times smarter than me, right? So why am I limiting them to invoicing?
Just a small thing,
So, but it is 4 years in, of having offshore team. And to be honest, I reckon it was the first 2 years was a headache.
Yeah.
You're dealing with things that you will not even realize. Power failures, generators collapsing, laptops breaking down, IT and security. You have to figure out. We used to have this app that we still have it, photo screens people's
like
computers, what they're doing. I didn't appreciate that it is a whole business.
Yeah.
So I get now. If I do it all again, would I take the challenge? Depending where I am in business. If I was 6 years in, I'd just go straight to an Aussie company. Please get it done for me.
Yeah.
Because we were 2 years in,
and you probably had a little bit more time.
A bit more cost. I like being ahead of capacity. I don't like ever working till like 2 a.m. I think that's really dangerous. But so we had the time and thing. But going to an Aussie company or even a company offshore is just awesome. They manage all the business interruption problems. They manage. Where now all the business interruptions,
it's your problem.
We manage. I remember one time, like Gavin and I got up, we were working away, and you're like, we use Slack to communicate. People use Teams or whatever it is. Right? We use Slack, and then usually we kind of say, "Oh, hello, good morning" to everyone, right? And one day Gavin and I are like, "Oh, good morning," and no one responded, and I was just like, "Man, Gav, what's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know. They're probably just like, I think we had 3 people." And then I was like, man, it's been an hour. What is going on? And then like the thoughts come in. Man, they've stolen my laptop. It's on eBay. It's done. The whole place is done. And then I got a message from our kind of team leader on WhatsApp going, I'm sorry, there's been a power failure. And Gavin and I are like, oh, what? How the hell am I going to deal with a power failure?
Yeah, exactly.
But you have to. We bought generators. Now, like most of our team have generators at home. You know, for people out there knowing that Sri Lanka, where our team is going through a massive humanitarian crisis right now. It's not easy to hear their stories and what they go through. But out of each of those options, going direct, going through an offshore agency, going through an Australian agency, there are pros and cons. I implore you to probably start not where we did, going direct, go middle.
You can go to an agency that's
offshore or here
already.
Because you can always pivot and go direct. Maybe you build a relationship with their employee and say, oh, you want to do this yourself? And there's a lot of stuff that happens, right? But,
and then while you're going through that journey, you probably learn some processes and plans and tick off a lot of those
sometimes things well. The more expensive, well-defined operation actually teaches you how to offshore because they're doing it for 50 mortgage brokers or 50 accountants or 50 logistics companies. So they kind of teach you how to have a good process. And then if you want to go direct, you have this base.
Yeah. You're not going there with zero knowledge.
But, you know, I think offshoring, Oz and I will both say amazing.
Amazing, yeah. It's really good.
It's really good. You know, I feel like we will continue to invest. Offshore is just something that works for our personality. Yep. And for anyone out there who's looking for a capacity release and maybe scared of the first Aussie big dollar cost hire, definitely explore outsourcing.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Again, we're up on YouTube. We've got these. We've got on Spotify. We've got a whole bunch of stuff. Please reach out if you have any feedback, comments, and we'll bring them more. Thanks again, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.